Good morning, my fourth grade students of أطفال الرمث النموذجي school. How are you? Hope you are fine. In this class, you will learn how to use the past simple tense. This is one of the most important tenses in the series of English verb tenses. Why? Because we use this tense so often to talk about many kinds of things. For example, you can use this tense to tell someone what you did yesterday. You can also use this tense to tell someone what happened in the world 5 years ago. So that whatever you are trying to describe what happened before now, you can use the past simple tense. Now, let's get started. I've shown the timeline. Here you see past, present, and future. You have to know that everything before now is past, so that it is the time before now. So that it is the time before now or before present. But you have to pay attention that these events have finished and over, so that we use this form to talk about actions that happened and finished in the past. How we form the past simple tense sentence. How we form the past simple tense sentence. We start with the subject as usual. We start with the subject plus the past form of the verb, which is verb to, plus the complement. In this part, we are going to use the verb to be, which are was and were. Was and were. So that subject plus the past form of the verb was or were plus the complement. You have to pay attention that if the subject is singular, mufrad, we use was. If the subject is singular, it follows by was. If the subject is plural, jama', it followed by were. It followed by were. Let's have some examples. The first example, the moon was a circle last night. The moon was a circle last night. The moon is the subject. The moon is the subject. Because it's singular, mufrad, it followed by was. Was is the verb. A circle last night is the complement. And here we have the keyword last night. Last night. It's a keyword that help us to know that we are talking in the simple past tense. Last night is a keyword. The moon was a circle last night. The moon is the subject, which is singular. Was is the verb. A circle last night, it's the complement. Example number 2. They were happy yesterday. They were happy yesterday. They is the subject. They is the subject. Because the subject is plural, jama', we use were. Were. Happy yesterday is the complement. Happy yesterday is the complement. They subject, were is the verb, happy yesterday is the complement of the sentence. And it is very important, Ya Rabi, to know that there are two types of verbs in English. There are two types of verbs in English. Here we have regular verbs and irregular verbs. Regular verbs, الأفعال المنتظمة, the verbs that end with ed or d. The verbs that end with ed or d. Such as what? Play. It is the base form of the verb. It becomes played. Play, played. Walk. This is the base form of the verb. It becomes walked. Walk, walked. يمشي, مشى. We have the verb watch. Watch. This is the base form of the verb. If I want to change it to the past form of the verb, it becomes watched. Watched. Watch, watched. The verb learn. Learn. This is the base form of the verb. We add ed to change it to the past form of the verb, it becomes learned. The verb cook, cook. This is the base form of the verb, verb 1. If I want to change it to verb 2 or the past form of the verb, it becomes cooked, cook, cooked. And here we have some spelling notes if I want to add ed to the verb. We said that if I want to change the verb from verb 1 to verb 2, which means the past form of the verb, we add ed. But in some situations, if the verb ends with e, such as smile, smile, and I want to change it to the past form of the verb, we only add d because we already have e letter, so that we only add d. So that smile becomes smiled, smiled. Okay, we only add d. We only add d to the verb. Again, if I want to change the verb from the base form to the past form, from verb 1 to verb 2, I'm going to add ed. But in some situations, the verbs that end with e, I have to add only d. Such as smile, it becomes smiled. Such as like, it ends with e, so that I only add d and it becomes liked, liked. What about the verbs that end with y? Such as what? Look at the verb study. It ends with y. What I have to do if I want to change it to the past form of the verb? I look to the letter before the last. بتطلع الحرف قبل الأخير. Is it a consonant or a vowel? The D letter is a consonant. So that you have to take off the letter Y. We change it to I and we add ed. Again, if the verb ends with Y, I have to look to the letter before the last. If it's a consonant, I take off the letter Y, then I change it to I, and we add ed. Now look at the verb play. It ends with Y. What I have to do? Look at the letter before the last. What is it? It's I. It's a vowel. حرف علة. So that I have to leave the letter Y as itself, then I add ed. Again, if the letter ends with Y, I have to look to the letter before the last. If it's a consonant, I take off the Y, I change it to I, then we add ed. If the letter before the last is a vowel, I only add ed. The third situation, if the verb ends with single consonant and the letter before the last is a single vowel, such as the verb stop. The letter P is a single consonant. The letter O is a single vowel. So that if I want to change it to the past form, I add ed. Before that, I have to double the last letter. Which is the letter P. Then I add ed. Because of what? Because the verb ends with single consonant. Before the single consonant, we have a single vowel. So that before adding ed, قبل ما نضيف ed, I have to double the last letter. Then I add ed. Again, the form of the simple past tense sentences is subject plus verb to, which is the past form of the verb, plus the complement, تكملة الجملة. Here we have some examples. I played football in the park last week. I is the subject. Played Played is the verb, which is a regular verb because it ends with ed. Football in the park last week, it is the complement of the sentence. I watched a movie last night. The same is here. I is the subject. I is the subject. Watched is the verb, which is a regular verb because it ends with ed. A movie last night, it is the complement. And you have to pay attention. Here we have a keyword, last night, last night. Here we have a keyword, last week. Here we have a keyword, yesterday. And here we have the keyword last year. So that we are talking about actions that happened and finished in the past. Happened and finished and over in the past. Okay? In this part, we are going to learn how to negate the sentence. How to negate the sentence of the simple past. As usual, we negate any sentence in English by using not. By using not. But how is that in the simple past tense? We use the helping verb did. We use the helping verb did. And if I want to negate the sentence, I add did plus not. Did plus not. Did not, or as the contraction, didn't. Didn't. So that if I want to negate the simple past tense sentence, I use the contraction didn't or did not. Did not. Look at this example. I played football in the park last week. I played football in the park last week. Negate the sentence. Negate the sentence. We said that we add the contraction didn't. We add didn't. We add didn't to the sentence and we change the verb from the past form to the base form of the verb so that played becomes play. I didn't play football in the park last week. You see, we put didn't after the subject or between the subject and the verb. We change the verb from the past form to the base form of the verb. Then we complete the sentence. I played football in the park last week. It becomes in the negative form. I didn't play football in the park last week. The same is here. I watched the movie last night. I watched the movie last night. And I want you to negate the sentence. بدنا نحولها لنفي. I use the contraction didn't. I use did plus not. Did not. I didn't. Watched become the base form of the verb, which is watch. And I complete the sentence. I didn't watch. I didn't watch a movie last night. What about the question? What about the question or the interrogative? We form the questions in the simple past tense in 3 steps. We form a question in the simple past tense in 3 steps. We start with did. We start with did. We change the verb from the past form, which is verb 2, to verb 1, which is the base form of the verb. And the third step, we put the question mark instead of the full stop. We put the question mark instead of the full stop. Let's have some examples. He visited his friend yesterday. He visited his friend yesterday. I want you to form a question. We said that we start with did. We start with did. It followed by the subject, he. Did he? The second step, we change the verb from the past form to the base form. Visited becomes visit. Did he visit his friend yesterday? Here we have a question mark instead of the full stop. The answer is yes, he did, or no, he didn't. Look at this example. They traveled to America last year. They traveled to America last year. Form a question. We start with did. We start with did. Did they travel? This is the base form of the verb. We change the past form of the verb to the base form. Did they travel to America last year? I want to answer with no. Then we have the subject they. Then we have didn't. No, they didn't. But what if we have the subject I? If we have the subject I and I want to form a question, I change the subject I to you. I change the subject I to you. I watched the movie last night. I watched the movie last night. It becomes, did you watch a movie last night? Did you watch a movie last night? And the answer is, no, I didn't, or yes, I did. No, I didn't, or yes, I did.